My name is Mandy, and I'm a librarian at Cleveland State University. And I'm going to be talking with you all about developing a generative AI policy for OER publishing. And before I say anything, I kind of wanted to get a little bit more information about all of you. You all can access the chat, right? Okay, great. I would love to just do a kind of informal poll. I'm assuming many of you are familiar with open education, but go ahead and put in the chat number 1, 2, or 3 based on your familiarity level. So 1 would be, I'm aware of what it is, but I haven't done much with it. 2 would be, I'm aware of it and I have experimented with using it. 3 would be, I'm an advocate and I have extensively used it, or maybe I'm an author of an open educational resource. Seeing a lot of 3s, but some 2s as well. No 1, okay. All right, that's very helpful, thank you. So kind of along the same lines, I'll let folks kind of continue for a moment. I would also like to know your level of familiarity with generative AI. So for this, 1 would be I've never tried it. 2 would be I've tried it, haven't done much with it. 3 would be I use it regularly. 4, I feel pretty comfortable with it. I could help somebody else use it. It's hard to call anyone an expert in this area, but you feel like kind of an expert. Okay, ooh, a lot of 4s. But yeah, you got kind of a variety though. Okay. So lots of folks who are comfortable with it. That's really good. All right, I think this is my last one, I promise. But I'd also like to know what role you have at your institution. Go ahead and put a 1 if you're a faculty member, 2 if you're a librarian, 3 if you're an instructional designer, 4 if you're an administrator, 5 if you're a student. And if you're something else, maybe you could let me know what that something else is. There are a number of 6s here. Academic advisor. Okay, great. Oh, that's really great. Have a lot of faculty and librarians, or faculty librarians, which is great. Okay, more faculty. Okay, wonderful. That's really helpful. Okay, Center for Teaching and Learning Assistant Director. Cool. That is very helpful. Pedagogical. Okay, consultant. All right, thank you all very much for humoring me. It's really helpful to get kind of a sense of who's here today. So I'm going to share my journey with you about how I tried to develop an OER policy, and I'm hoping that by sharing the process I went through, you will gain ideas for developing your own OER policy if you are a librarian or someone who manages an OER program. But if you aren't, I hope that you get a better sense of AI strengths and weaknesses when it comes to creating OERs. And then hopefully everyone gets a little clarity about your personal decisions related to using AI to develop OERs. And I was not able to catch the keynote today, so I would be curious if anybody, after I share what I've done, if anybody has anything to add based on his perspective. So to give you a little bit of context, I'm at Cleveland State University, and we have a number of affordability strategies that kind of work together to reduce costs for textbook costs for students. And I'm going to share these slides with you later so you can check out all these different things. We do have a small grant. We have a summer symposium every spring, early summer. That is a kind of a training program for faculty, giving them basic information about open education and encouraging adoption. And then our grant we offer once a year, that is more for actually adapting or creating material. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. We have a textbook center with print materials. We obviously can't have every single textbook that's required, but we try to have a good collection of materials for students to check out for 2 hours at a time. We have electronic course reserves and print course reserves. And then we also try to connect faculty with library ebooks when possible. Obviously, a lot of publishers don't really like to make their textbooks available as multi-license ebooks, or multi-seat ebooks, but when that's possible, we try to connect faculty with those resources as well. Looking just at our grant program, we've been offering it since 2016 through the library. And at this point, we've served dozens of faculty on our campus to adapt or create zero-cost course material, and we've saved our students more than $2 million. So each grantee works with a small team of people. It's me as the OER librarian. We also have the subject librarian for that person's department, someone who's kind of our resident expert in press books, and then we assign an instructional designer to each team. So the grantee gets support in addition to a little bit of funding to help them do this project. And that's really where our publishing program comes in. We have a publishing imprint. It does include non-open books as well. And as I mentioned, we use press books. So far, we've published 44 books. So we've been doing this for a while. We've had some experience with this. But I will say our publishing program is not like a big professional program. The grants that the faculty get are not large, and the program is not able to provide copy editing, graphic design, or other traditional publishing support. So if faculty want that, we have to try to find that elsewhere, or we just aren't able to offer it to them. And then the program staff is me, and this is like a tiny, tiny part of my job, and a couple of others who it's not really even part of their job, and they kind of do it on the side. So we're very stretched thin in terms of providing support. I don't know, does this sound familiar to anybody else here? Okay. Yeah, so in this context, so we're trying to offer support for faculty, and we don't have a lot of additional resources we can offer. In this context, I have been starting to hear from my faculty authors things like, oh, can I use AI to create the ancillaries for this book? Or I created this chapter with help from AI, so it was a lot quicker. So not even asking, is this okay? But just kind of mentioning casually, hey, I used AI to write this. Or how do I acknowledge that I used AI for this? So all of these things are starting to come up, and that was really a red flag to me that we really needed to think about for our program if we were going to have guidelines for our faculty authors that were associated with our publishing program. And that set me off on a journey to answer the question, what's okay when it comes to AI and open education? So some of this will probably be review to you all, but we know that using OERs can save students money, it can improve student outcomes, it can increase flexibility for faculty, give them more options to modify their material to what they need. It can improve the classroom experience, especially when we're talking about open pedagogy, and promote inclusivity. Again, with open pedagogy, we can invite students to actually create content that reflects their own perspectives, which may not be present in a commercial textbook. So there are lots and lots of benefits to OERs. So with that in mind, why don't we just use them in every class? This is kind of obvious to a lot of folks now, but go ahead and put in the chat reasons that come to your mind. Why don't we just use OERs if they're so amazing and they help students so much? Academic freedom. So I'm saying we should just make them. Additional labor, time, and effort takes time. Okay, finding the one that matches what you want to do. Okay, bookstore can be a barrier. Just not enough available for discipline. Time, cost, quality. The existing materials might not be sufficient, or there are no ancillary materials for what you want to adopt. Yes. Okay, let me just, you all did an amazing job leading into my next slide. So here's what I have. Reflects a lot of what you said. So there maybe isn't an OER for every subject area or one that matches the needs and standards that a faculty member has, and they have every right to have those standards for their own class. So maybe there just isn't anything that works for them. Lack of ancillary materials. So if you're teaching, 150 students a semester, it can be very difficult to adopt something that doesn't have homework system attached to it, slides, other kinds of support for faculty. And then switching course materials takes time. And I think the faculty members that I talk to, this is a really big deal. No matter what you're switching to something new requires rethinking your teaching, maybe redesigning your class. And our faculty are very overwhelmed. At least in Ohio, they're dealing with like political issues that, frankly, that they shouldn't have to deal with. They're dealing with AI. They've got all these other concerns that, besides just for OER, but just in general, that are really stressing them out. So those are legit challenges. Can generative AI solve all of these problems? This was a question I had. So if OERs don't exist for every subject area, maybe generative AI tools can create materials that meet our exact specifications. No textbook exists that is exactly what I'm looking for. Maybe I can just have AI write a whole bunch of material that does match what I'm looking for. Lack of ancillary materials, generative AI tools can quickly and easily create ancillaries based on whatever text you give it. You say, here's the text, please generate, 10 multiple choice questions per chapter or something. And it's quick. Switching course materials takes time. Maybe Gen AI tools can make that process quicker and easier. Although I'm not going to make the claim that you don't still need a lot of time and effort and expertise, but maybe it could be a quicker transition. And then if we think about some of generative AI's strengths, AI works best when the outputs can be judged by an expert. We know that these tools hallucinate and they confidently say things that are totally wrong. But if an expert is judging it, maybe the outputs we can modify them and make them correct. And the person teaching a textbook should be exactly that, an expert in that subject who should be able to judge the content that comes out of a tool. The way that AI kind of condenses down a lot of established knowledge and kind of just identifies the common knowledge, things that are not controversial, that's kind of what a textbook does in many ways. So it kind of aligns well with the purpose of a textbook. AI can generate content very quickly and efficiently, and AI can generate content that's very customized to students' needs. So if I want content that's really specific to my region, for example, maybe I want case studies that involve businesses in Northeast Ohio where I am. Well, I can have AI generate that, and that maybe will resonate more with students. Okay, I want to check the chat really quick before I continue here. Yes, not enough research, enough resources. How do you find them? Not enough appropriate materials. Okay. To kind of take this a step further, I don't know if anybody has heard about David Wiley's generative textbook idea. So David Wiley is an important figure, somewhat controversial figure in open education. And recently he has said, the future will not even involve textbooks. Like students really don't want books. They don't want to read. Instead, maybe they're going to want to learn by just having an interactive conversation with a chat bot that will teach them the content. So that's kind of taking it even further. And like I said, I will share the slides with you. I'll have links to all this stuff. So before we get really excited and we say generative AI has solved all of our problems, we have to take a moment to, of course, talk about some concerns and ethical issues with this new technology. And this will probably be a review to many of you. Bias, these tools reflect human bias because of the data they were trained on. And that's really important when we're creating educational materials. We don't want those materials to reflect stereotypes and bias that definitely exist in these data sets. Hallucinations. So as I said, and you all probably know, AI tools make up content and confidently report it to you. If you're a professor, hopefully you'll be able to identify when that's happening as you're developing content. But in the case of a generative textbook, where the idea is the student is just learning by chatting with a chat bot, they don't really have the expertise necessarily to identify if something is incorrect. So that's a pretty major flaw in that approach. And then I always make sure to mention the environmental impact. And I think a lot of people have begun really paying attention to this. There's a lack of transparency about this, but it's clear to run data centers that power these tools and that train them it takes considerable fresh, potable water and electricity resources, and that has really driven demand for fossil fuel energy, which is a huge issue. So, um, I think often people will mention these things and then say, and then those are the ethical issues and move on. But I think that that's really important to think, how might this actually impact whether I decide to use AI or not. It's not a foregone conclusion that I will definitely use AI for things. Then we have the copyright implications, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about these because um, I think that they're especially relevant to the discussions about open education. And some of you may actually know more than me about this, so feel free to jump in. But there's kind of two areas when we think about copyright in AI. We have the training data, so what was used to train the tool. And recently, a judge found that Anthropic's use of copyrighted content for training was a fair use, although they found that when it used pirated material, that was not a fair use. So it's a little bit complicated, but that's kind of not the end of the story. There are still other legal battles happening, and people are on kind of both sides of this issue. They're saying, well, it really does seem like a fair use. And I think the Association of Research Libraries has even said this seems like a fair use to us. And others say, using copyrighted work for such a clearly lucrative purpose, directly competing with a market for the original works, should be considered an infringement, especially folks who are artists and who depend on their intellectual property for their living. Then we have the outputs of the tool. And right now, generative AI outputs are not protected by copyright, although this is being contested in many ways. The idea is only human-generated content can be protected by copyright. So this is content created by a non-human entity, and it is not protected. It is possible to write a prompt that would result in an output that's very similar to copyrighted content, and you've probably seen examples of this. I had a friend who, asked the tool for an image of Yoda, and it just gave it to her. It just gave her an image of Yoda. A lot of guardrails have been added since that time. So it's a little bit better, but it can still happen. But the important thing is that the tool is not really built. It's not really built for that sole purpose. It's possible to do that, but it's not really how the tool is supposed to work. And that's actually important from a copyright standpoint. In, I want to say January of this year, the US Copyright Office published a report on the copyrightability of AI. And they reiterated that AI tool outputs are in the public domain, and that human contributions and alterations can then be protected. And this is kind of a case-by-case decision. So if AI creates something and then I add a bunch of additional content, the stuff that I add, I have copyright in, but the stuff that the AI created has no copyright protection. And some people will say, well, I wrote this really amazing, complicated prompt, so I should own the copyright and the output from that. But that they kind of reiterated, like, those two things are different. Just because you spend a lot of time and energy writing the prompt, maybe you have copyright in that prompt, but the machine is the one that's creating the output in this case. They also emphasize that humans should try to avoid using an AI tool to directly replicate copyrighted content. So when it comes to working with AI, here are a couple scenarios. So if you want to openly license your own content with AI addition, so kind of a remix of you and AI, again, your contributions belong to you. And this is something you might think of like, well, can I openly license the whole work if some of it has AI content? If what you've added is enough to be your own thing, then yes, you may own the entire work enough that such that you can openly license it, just the way that if you wrote something and you included a lot of things using fair use, you would be able to still say the whole thing is openly licensed in this way. But you should probably mark that public domain content just as you would other public domain content. If you're mixing someone else's open content with AI, this is, I think, an area that's really evolving. It's very likely that these AI tools have already scraped that data. It's kind of like easy pickings because it's openly licensed. So the cat's kind of out of the bag there. but you may want to do what you can to respect the author's wishes. They may not want you to take that content and input it into an AI tool to make something new. So you may even want to reach out and ask about that. Um, Mixing AI content with non-open content to create an OER. OERs can and do rely on fair use. So if you've got AI stuff and if you've got stuff protected by copyright, you would just need to make sure that what you're doing is a fair use. And there's a really excellent code of best practices already written about fair use for open educational resources. I'm going to just pause for a second. I've been talking a long time here, and I'm going to put this link in the chat. Does anyone have any questions so far? Here's a question. How much needs to belong to you? What does that mean? If you're chatting back and forth, how much text you added, or is modifying its text okay? Yes, fair use. I um I'm hesitant to get into it too much right now because that would be a whole other presentation. But fair use is not very clear, and it's not very clear on purpose. Really, the only way you know if your use is fair is if you were sued and you went to court and a judge says your use is fair or it isn't. So it's very murky, but it's not working. Thank you for letting me know. I'm going to just put the title of this in the chat. And if anybody else can find it, this is where my librarian friends might be able to help. That's the name of it, but that is where I would go for guidance about fair use. As far as your question, like how much is enough, that's also not super clear cut. Your work that you have created is yours. You can modify AI content to the point that it becomes yours somewhere, but it's not like a strict cutoff point. What I would say is this: it's very unlikely that you would use AI to generate content and then just not do anything with it, just like have it as is. So in most cases, you would probably want to go in and improve it and change it. And that's going to add a lot of your own unique content to it, to the point where you may be able to say, this is mostly mine. That looks right. Thank you so much. Yes, that looks right. I appreciate it. Um, yeah, good question. I don't know if I fully answered it. Yes. Yes, great, Leanne. Who is the author of this and why? Help something critically. Yeah, I think authorship and ownership of intellectual property is something that is very cultural. And in our country, in the United States, that is how we, that is something that we care a lot about, is owning and having control. But it's often like very complicated, and we build on each other's content a lot more than I think we realize. So, yeah. One final thing before we move on, I just want to remind you, just like when we talk about academic integrity and citing your sources is not a legal framework. It's not like you could get sued for not citing your sources. That's an academic integrity set of rules that most academic institutions have, and that is more about ethics. The law is not necessarily, the legal framework of copyright does not necessarily tell us what is the right thing to do. We have to decide that with our own ethical framework. So even if something is legal and okay, we have to go through that kind of ethical discovery ourselves. Yes. So what's the upshot? The upshot is, if I'm trying to write guidelines about this, it's going to be very complicated. Telling faculty what authors can do with their AI is difficult. Things are constantly changing, as you saw, where there was some very recent legislation about AI and the LLM Claude. So, different legislations happening all the time. Things are happening on our campuses in terms of policies and what's okay and what isn't. We have all these ethical concerns. There's worry about, people in the global South helping to make these, through terrible working conditions, helping to make these tools available for us to use. We have worries about academic integrity. And then I think there's this just pressure to innovate and work really quickly. Like you've got to get on board with AI or like you're going to be behind the curve and we've got to go now, now, now. And also like to be productive, maybe you feel like I have to use AI or I'm not going to be able to write this OER because I'm just way overburdened with other things that I have to do. And then finally, there are different faculty preferences. And I have seen it all on my campus. We've got folks who are just vehemently opposed to AI to the point where they're like, I will not talk to you again if I know that you used AI, to folks who are really huge fans of it and want to use it in all aspects of their work. And it's very difficult to set guidelines in this environment, as anyone here who's an administrator probably already knows. Um, but I tried to do it anyway. So here's my attempt. Here's how we're handling it at my institution. And I'm going to put this link in the chat. Hopefully this time it will work. This is the guidelines document that I generated. I hope that works. Let me know if it didn't. So it has some of that context that I've already explained. And then here are the general guidelines. So first, transparency. I really want authors to be transparent about what they wrote and what they did not write. I don't want to be producing AI generated books, 100% AI generated books through our publishing program. But if they are going to use AI, I want it to be clear to readers what they did. Accuracy and bias. The author is ultimately responsible for the accuracy of the material, so they just need to go through and do a review themselves and take steps to mitigate that bias and the hallucinations. Consent, if they are using content that is not openly licensed, that is private information, they should really be careful about inputting it into one of these tools in order to use it to generate an OER through AI. Ethical use, this is a tricky one. Like they should really think of kind of weigh the impact of their use on society. Do they feel like it's overall a net positive or not? And then given those general guidelines, I have some acceptable uses here, which I totally would love your feedback on, especially since we have so many faculty here. They can use AI for planning, for outlining, for grammar, writing fluency improvements, developing assessments or ancillaries. I just think those are the kinds of things that if you can offload some of that to AI, it just makes adoption more possible. Formatting help, making materials more accessible, so writing alt text, things like that, as long as it's being checked for accuracy. And then they can use it to author parts of the text if it's carefully reviewed and it's not like the entire book is written by AI. And so that's kind of what I said here. They can't just have an AI textbook. That is not their work, and that's not something we want to be supporting with our program. And then right now, I've said they cannot use it to generate images. I want to first see if we can find openly licensed images and support artists before turning to AI. But we have already had occasions where we wanted to use AI. For example, one of our covers, book covers, I think we decided to use AI, an AI generated image. And then I just say, if you're not sure, you should reach out to me. And this is what we have so far. And I would love, I'm going to check okay. Okay, so folks are finding that helpful. Thank you, Marissa, for the YouTube suggestion. Not sure what grad students are doing. I mean, these are maybe guidelines that would be useful beyond just talking with faculty. Like some of you may be able to use some of these guidelines for your students in their writing. My colleague, Melanie Gagich, she's amazing. And she is doing a lot of, she's a first-year writing director at Cleveland State. So she works with students who are writing all the time. And one thing she has done is work with the students to create prompts that they can give to an AI tool that will allow them to get AI feedback. So first they do human peer review and then they do AI peer review. And those prompts are very specific. You have to tell the tool, you know, give me some tips on how I can make my thesis more clear. Do not change my text. Provide the tips as a separate, you know, give me feedback separately. Otherwise, it gets kind of nosy and it starts to try to come in and actually change text for you. And that's kind of like it's trying to be helpful, I guess. That's its MO, but that is not what you want necessarily. And the same is true here with writing material for textbooks. You might have to tell the tool, like, I just want you to do X. Please don't change my text. Please don't add a paragraph. Please don't, add more sources or something. This is just what I want you to do. So I'm thinking folks are talking about images, which is helpful. Any questions about these guidelines or any feedback? I also wanted to point out that Affordable Learning Georgia has a really great policy that is more comprehensive than mine, and it's for their statewide program, and I definitely recommend checking it out. The Open Education Network in their Pub 101 course, they have a new module called The Role of AI in OER Publishing, so I would check that out too. I also love to shout out Liza Long, who is awesome. She's another first-year writing instructor at a different institution, and this is one OER that she wrote, Critical Worlds, and it includes a lot of assignments where she actually has students interact with AI. And then I don't have the link here, but she did write another one. It has cyborg in the title, but essentially she co-authored it with AI and was really clear about how AI contributed to the text. So really great example of this in action. And then Doers, which is kind of a national organization, has been working with some researchers to develop a report about generative AI and OER based on a bunch of focus groups that they had. And that report, I think, will be ready within the next few months. So I would keep my eye out for that. But that's a really, really interesting source of information as well. I'm going to put some of these links in the chat in case folks would like to check them out. Oh, thank you. Cyborgs and Centaurs. Yes, that is the one. All right. Yes, let me get these links for you all. Okay, awesome. Yay. I'm glad it's helpful. And one more. Sorry, y'all. Okay. So, with the little bit of time that we have left, for those who are interested in experimenting a little bit with how AI does in terms of writing content for OERs, I did do a workshop for our faculty on campus. And a lot of this content I borrowed. I'm going to share this in the chat as well. But here is the handout that we used. So you all are welcome to use it, check it out. There are a variety of activities there and kind of reflection questions to consider, and kind of asks you to experiment with trying a tool of your choice to create open content. And I think that's maybe the best way to determine if it's actually going to be a good idea. At that workshop, we were in person, so we were able to kind of like try it out, and right away faculty could see like, oh wow, it did really well with this, but this is totally bad. Like this is not good. I would have to totally rewrite this or whatever. So as the expert, I feel like this is maybe the best way to really dip your toe in, is to just try it out and see how it does. Yes. Just some general tips for prompting if you're going to try this. You all know this by this point. Give the tool a role. Make it clear like you're an academic professor and you teach in this subject. Indicate the student level. I need an assignment for students who are undergraduates in a general education course. They're not majors in the subject, or they're students at the graduate level. You can give preferences for format and length. You could say, please write a chapter for me, but ensure it's no more than 20 pages or whatever. And then remember, when you're writing an OER, you are not just writing any, like an article or a book. This is a pedagogical text. So you can ask a tool for those things to be included in the results, or those are maybe some of the things that you specifically go to AI to help with. So please include call outs with definitions. Please include examples. Please write a case study about X, Y, or Z. Please come up with 3 reflection questions for each chapter, whatever it might be. And then the other thing I would say is always make a note about bias. So do some thinking ahead of time before you ask the tool to create something. Um, for all examples, please include people of various ethnicities and gender identities. So where might there be an opportunity for bias to sneak in, and how can you preemptively prevent that from happening? So you can create an open textbook chapter, create a quiz, some other ancillary material. One thing to keep in mind is if it's easy to create the ancillary with AI, is it easy for a student to use AI to answer the assessment? If it is, then maybe you need to rethink what the assessment even is, and that might be something that AI can help you do. Maybe it can help you think through how to make your assessment a little more authentic. Or you can try adapting an existing OER, say something like, take this material and change the grade level, or change the language, change the format. Take these 2 OER texts and combine them, or add ancillaries to this. And then ask yourself, did the AI process make things quicker? What's still missing? What's unsatisfactory? And in that workshop I did with my own faculty on campus, there was at least one person who said, I've been trying to do this, and I find that the tool is not great at this, but it's saving me just enough time that I'm continuing to do it, and then I'm adding my own expertise. So that may be your experience. It might be really useful. It might be totally unhelpful. The only way to know is to try it out. And use your professor skills, be critical, ask questions. I feel like faculty are really good at being critical. That's kind of what you're trained to do. Prioritize quality. It seems like it goes without saying, but I think it's really, really important that you take the time to improve what's there, because students have begun to notice when we use AI for things, and they don't always like it. And sometimes it's because like the output is not that great. So we need to go in and make sure we're prioritizing quality. And then take your time. Don't feel that rush, because that's going to help the quality. If you feel like, I'm not going to just create something as fast as possible, but instead say, I would like to use AI to help me with this project, but I'm going to prioritize quality and take my time, I think the result will be better. And I think that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions? Was this useful to you? Okay, great. Okay, curious how you draw the line with partial authoring with AI. Do I have a general rule for how much is too much? Great question. I do not, but I don't have the resources to police faculty authors and be like, well, what percentage of this is AI generated? I think just having a discussion with them about their use and making sure that I emphasize like the outputs of our publishing imprint need to be authored by humans primarily. I think that often really helps so that they can at least kind of think about it and make a judgment. But yeah, we don't have a hard and fast rule. Okay, great. Good question. If you have other questions, I think I have my contact here, so I'm going to put my email in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to me. And also, please feel free to use the guidelines that we generated and modify them however you want. Marissa, where do faculty share the OER they have created? Oh, that's in my slides as well. So I'm going to share my slides link as well. And you'll see there's a link to, sorry, y'all. There's a link to our library of content, so that you can check out everything we've published so far. But we usually use Pressbooks to publish material for everybody. Let me know if that doesn't work. All right, that's all I have. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you, Mandy. That was great. The PPT works for me. I'll make sure to put the PPT as well as the recording to this on our LibGuide page. It's 10:42, so we still have a lot of time before our next breakout session. Feel free to take a break. I know we went straight from Lucas Wright keynote to the next breakout session, so if anybody needs a break, this will be a good time. We're gonna keep this room open, so if people want to hang out and talk about AI. I don't know if Mandy, you need to go, or if you can just hang out and talk. Maybe the people who were, formulating questions, maybe they'll finally get them out.
I see
But
one
yes,
here.
yeah, great. So and then everyone make sure whenever you're ready, we'll probably get the next rooms open up at 5 to the hour. So make sure to leave this one and find the next one to go to.
Marissa has two questions. Does it need to be an entire book to publish in Pressbooks? No, I think it's pretty flexible. It uses, well, it's very user-friendly format, and you can have like one page, I guess, if you really wanted to, or you can have like multiple chapters. It's very flexible. Is it okay to share your slides with my research group? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, feel free to share anything that I shared today. Any questions? Other questions?
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mandy, for the presentation. In our college, we have like I think 2 cycles of a grant for motivating instructors to create course materials for their disciplines. So I was wondering about your grant. Is it once? You said it's once a year, right? Like
Yeah.
the cycle is just once a year.
Yes, we did for a while. We had it twice a year, but I think right around COVID time, we switched to just once a year.
Is it okay to ask about the stipend? How much is it for each, or is different? Like different categories you have, or just one category?
Yes, this is a good question. Our stipend is not very big. It's $1,000 for authoring, and for a little while we were able to offer 2,500, which I think is definitely more reasonable for like authoring a whole textbook, and even that's not that much. And then for something that's more like taking existing materials and bringing them together into a new work, like taking a bunch of library things and bringing them together, that's $500.
So 1,500.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
see. Okay. Then I have another question. I asked the keynote speaker the same question, but it was a last minute question, so there was not enough time. So it's about the, if, for example, I applied for your grant and then I used AI, like for the authoring, the $1,000. But I use a lot of AI tools to generate material for me, including images or content. Yes, I revised it. I use my expertise in the area to, to check the content, the accuracy, and all of that. But still, basically it was generated by AI. The content itself. How do you compensate the instructor? Like, even using AI, like which is saving a lot of time and effort, but still get compensated the $1,000. So how do you make sure, I mean, what's the process, or how can
Mhm.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because this is
Yeah.
the grant and college, like resources and financing and, stipend.
Right.
So yeah, how do you
Yes.
do that?
That's a great question. Right now, for our publishing program, our OER publishing program, we would want to only give grants to authors that are mostly authoring it themselves. However, I think you make a good point. There may be cases where like you can use AI to do most of it and then edit it, and like paying for the AI tools, that's a cost to you, and then the output is a benefit to the institution. So my thought would be that this would be a case where either A, I would ask the institution to maybe pay for my whatever pro account in whatever tool I'm using. Um, or B, I would talk to your grant program and say, this is maybe a unique case. Can I use my grant funding to offset the cost of these generative AI tools? And then just see what they say.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
There's a question here from Johnny. What is the general rule for attribution of a work partially created using generative AI? Yes. So I kind of modeled it here. There are different, so like Liza Long has a really good example in the one that I put in the chat. She is really good at giving attribution. For me, here's what I put. They're generated, these guidelines were generated, this is like kind of a weak sauce one. They're generated with the help of generative AI tool Gemini. I think you just, somewhere in the text, you, near where the AI content is, you just give an acknowledgement, generative AI, name the tool, this is the tool that was used, and then like, what did the tool help you do? And if you wanted to go even further, what Liza does is she kind of has an acknowledgement the way you might have a land acknowledgement, where she acknowledges like, I acknowledge that there are harms that are associated with using AI. This is how I used it anyway, essentially. But I don't know that there is like a best practice established so far. That's just kind of what I would recommend. Yes, Marissa, it is frustrating that there's a sense you have to pay for the accounts yourselves, even though the institutions are kind of promoting it. Yeah. Yes, it's problematic. Other questions? All right, if there are no more questions, thank you all very much for attending. I hope it was helpful, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you.
All right, everyone.